What's good, you guys? C.A.S.T back in another video, and as you can see, we're not in the same places we once were. I actually had to move, had to take the past month off because I was relocating. I'm in a much better location now. You can see I have much better lighting because I actually have overhead lights in this spot versus the multiple lamps I had previously, and that's going to make for even better film quality with my videos I'm uploading. But as you saw in my last video, I was showing you some gameplay footage using my FX 9590 gaming PC running some Battlefield 6 in 2026, and I was actually having a very good experience. Now, since then, I've actually changed the system around a little bit, different components here and there, fine-tuned the settings in both the system and on the game itself, and I've been putting multiple hours into this video game. Actually, I think the only time I have been playing Battlefield 6 is at the couch on this PC and not on my main system, which is kind of crazy, but I'll probably be absolutely cracked when I end up hopping on over there with my friends. Despite the RAM apocalypse going on right now with RAM, GPUs, SSD, even hard drives, I think are super expensive right now. Being out of reach for a lot of gamers, you can still have yourself a very good experience, and a lot of times you already have what you need in your PC case right now, sitting next to your monitor. So we're going to be going over exactly what you should be doing, whether you already have the hardware, you're looking to upgrade, looking on the used market, whatever it might be, so that you can get the most performance and make your PC last forever. Now, this is going to be part one of the series, and we're going to be talking about GPUs primarily. So let's get into it. I'm trying to make sure I don't ramble as much in these videos. So I actually have like a bunch of notes on my phone that I'm using to kind of make sure I don't talk too much, but that's neither here nor there. Number one, make sure you buy the right graphics card for your specific use case. This is pretty much going to be the default where you start with whatever upgrade you have for your PC, whether it be a graphics card or something else. Look at the specific task you're trying to achieve, the specific software suite or program you're trying to run, and what level of performance you're expecting to run on said task or program to be able to achieve said outcome for you to be satisfied. Once you set those expectations, it will allow you better to be able to gauge what level graphics cards you might need. If you just want to be able to have 60 FPS, you could probably buy anything, that was made in the past 5 to 6 years, and you probably are going to be fine, especially at 1080p. But if you're trying to like upgrade to an OLED monitor, go into 4K gaming, high refresh rate gaming, play the latest and greatest titles at the max settings, take advantage of like the new ray tracing or path tracing technologies that are available to new video games, then you might want to reconsider. Also, if you're doing something not gaming related, but maybe looking at video editing, there's specific encoders and decoders on a graphics card that do that specific task. These are literal physical parts of the ASIC, of the actual core itself, that are not even utilized when playing a video game. So having the most balls to the walls high performance graphics card won't help you if it doesn't have the proper encoders to do what you're looking for. So that's also something to keep in consideration. And then with like large language models or running simulations, VRAM is of more importance. So make sure you have proper amounts of VRAM to achieve your specific goal. Now, for the example that I'm using for my specific use case, I was actually doing a dual GPU setup with my FX 9590, hoping to use lossless scaling to get a little bit more performance. And I settled on getting this RTX 3070. This is actually my second 3070 I've had. I had one about 2 years ago, and this is probably one of my most favorite graphics cards I've owned personally and had the ability to use. I've gamed on this, edited videos off of this. Um, yeah, this is definitely top 5 graphics cards I've personally owned, hands down. But why did I settle on a 3070? Well, with the secondary graphics card, I wanted something that would have the full bandwidth because I have full PCIe 16 slots for a secondary GPU in my system. So I wanted to be able to use something that had full bandwidth. That way I'm not bandwidth limited with a loss of scaling, looking at my use case, looking at the task I'm trying to achieve. This has full X16, but it's not too expensive. It has 8 gigabytes of VRAM, which is the biggest limiting factor, but at the same time, not really that important for lossless scaling as a secondary GPU, not really a VRAM heavy workload that it runs through. It also is relatively power efficient, really small, and aesthetically the same size as the 4070 Super that I have in that system. So aesthetically, it just looks really, really clean. I don't know what it is about like dual GPU setups of Founders Edition graphics cards, whether it's AMD or NVIDIA, just really two matching graphics cards in general, but that is super, super clean. One of the cleanest things I've seen in PC builds in a while. So I wanted to be able to achieve that on my specific build. Other things you should be looking at, if I had to give rough advice, buy something that has been manufactured in the past 5 to 6 years. If you could look at the 10 series or older Radeon graphics cards, but bear in mind that a lot of those graphics cards are not really going to have the driver support necessary, at least not on Windows. So your mileage may vary as far as the use cases in modern day titles and games. Now, once you settle on the right graphics card architecture, you want to make sure you buy the right graphics card GPU itself. I'm talking about the actual physical card. You know, this 3070 is the Founders Edition made directly from NVIDIA, but there's probably at least hundreds of versions of this same graphics card with this same GPU core that might have a different cooler from a different manufacturer, different power limits, what have you. A common mistake we see a lot, or at least I see a lot now, is that people are buying and tailoring their systems to work with a specific graphics card rather than buying a graphics card tailored to work with their specific system, which is really the way you should be doing it. But with how crazy prices are, especially the fluctuating effect of graphics cards, people are always like, have the fear of missing out. So whatever 5080, 5090, 9070 XT you can get your hands on before they go out of stock inevitably, and the prices double or triple, is what you end up getting. But ideally, you're picking the right graphics card for your system. Now, what does that actually look like? Well, different AIBs are going to have different levels of quality as far as how they build the PCB, the type of cooling that they use, the fan curves, the BIOS. All that is going to affect how the graphics card actually performs. And some manufacturers have a little bit better of a track record of building quality graphics cards compared to others. Now, thankfully for the 30 series, and right around that COVID time period, graphics cards really saw the next generation of how they were being built. There are some 20 series graphics cards, and I guess what was the equivalent back then? RDNA 1 GPUs as well that were of okay build quality, but they're more so of like graphics cards how they were built of yesteryear. If you were to buy a graphics card that's 30 series or newer or RDNA 2 or newer, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a cooler that's actually built to sufficiently cool the graphics card. You would not believe how often it was that manufacturers were literally selling graphics cards that with coolers that were not capable of keeping them cool. But thankfully, with how crazy big graphics cards are getting nowadays and the power limits, coolers are very, very good. So you really shouldn't have to worry about that too much. But other things to keep in consideration: the size of your graphics card. Um, is the graphics card easily repairable? There are PC services out there that will repair graphics cards, so maybe make sure you get a graphics card that can be easily repairable if that's something that you're worried about with buying a used graphics card and you really want to keep this thing up and running. Um, are there replacement fans, replacement back plates that you can find on the used market or resellers selling it that might be of effect to you if you're buying a graphics card? Making sure that it has a proper amount of power delivery, making sure there aren't any weird manufacturing issues. There are a plethora of graphics cards that have had weird issues over time. The ones off the top of my head, 2080 Ti had VRAM issues. So even though it is technically the same performance as a 3070, I probably could have found a 2080 Ti that is similar size and performance to this um, with more VRAM. I wasn't going to risk buying a used graphics card that had VRAM issues. I would say just consistently, there's at least going to be one of the big name manufacturers that's going to have some sort of performance issue with the graphics card every generation. So it's do your due diligence and make sure to do the reviews and look up any sort of information on the graphics card you're looking at purchasing, especially secondhand, to make sure there's no reports of this specific graphics card having issues in the past. Okay, so you picked up your graphics card, you got the right model, came in the mail, looks pretty good. Now you have to worry about putting it in your system and making sure you're optimizing for maximum performance. And one of the easiest ways you can do to maximize the performance of your graphics card is to set a custom fan curve for that specific GPU. Now, there's gonna be three things. This is the first one of the tips that I have as far as optimizations you can do. This one is 100% universal and 100% risk-free. Now, all modern GPUs, at least I would say going back 10 years and newer, are gonna have a technology called GPU boost or GPU boost frequency technology, where essentially there's a logic on the board itself that's going to allow the graphics card to upclock itself or maintain its boost clock as long as possible, so long as you have thermal headroom and power delivery. You can also tune your power profile, and that will also kind of affect the boost logic for GPU boost. But in a sense, if you have the thermal headroom, you will boost your graphics card higher or up to its advertised or programmed boost limit or boost clock of said GPU. And if you don't tune the fan curve, which a lot of the cases, the out of the box fan curve from these fans really aren't optimized for performance, but more so for decibel level. Now, why do manufacturers do this? The only thing I can think of is that the layman is probably more likely to complain about a noisy graphics card rather than a underperforming graphics card. And in most situations, if you're playing video games without an FPS counter, you're not going to notice the difference in performance, but you will notice the difference in audio level if graphics cards are screaming at you. So what you should do for these graphics cards is to get some sort of tuning software, whether you want to use a fan profile tuner or MSI Afterburner or an overclocking software to be able to custom tune your fan curves on your graphics card. And this will allow you to, again, raise the RPM level for a set temperature. Now, what I do personally, I use Argus Monitor, and I don't actually look at the GPU core temperature. I look at the GPU hotspot temperature. There are a bunch of different temp sensors on the graphics card itself, and the hotspot temperature is the hottest temperature sensor. Just the GPU core temperature is the average of all the sensors on the GPU itself. And usually, no, all the time, I would say, the hotspot temperature is going to be hotter than the average temperature of the GPU itself. I usually treat the hotspot temperature as the GPU core temperature. So whatever the graphics card was advertised to run at under load from the factory, if it was brand new, I try to tune the fan curve to bring the hotspot temperature down to that level. So if the overall average core temperature is at least 10 to 15 degrees cooler than what it was advertised to be, or whatever that delta is for your specific graphics card in ideal situations. What this is going to allow you to do is have adequate temperatures on your graphics card and also other components on your PCB. Depending on the graphics card manufacturer, it's going to have or not have temperature sensors for different things on the PCB, such as the VRMs, the MOSFET, different power delivery components, VRAM, so on and so forth. It's not just the graphics card core itself you have to worry about cooling, but also the VRAM and the power delivery, especially for modern day graphics cards that are going to need to be adequately cooled, or else your graphics card is going to cook itself and probably run into some issues down the line. Now, if you do your research properly with a graphics card that has proper cooling for all these components, you really shouldn't run into too many issues. And like I said, a lot of these graphics cards have been manufactured since the pandemic, since 30 series really have adequate cooling, but you really still got to be careful with it. And there's still a lot of room to be had with these overbuilt coolers to really bring these temperatures down as much as possible. If you do have the cooling horsepower, it is going to increase the overall boost clock that you're going to be able to hold and sustain in all your workloads. You might even be able to change the power profile to maintain your max boost clock all the time, and that is going to overall affect, your consistent FPS level or FPS performance you get across the board in all your video games. This could be an effective way to eliminate lag spikes or frame dips that you might experience when playing a video game when you're loading different level of quality scenes. So overall, fan curves are really important to breathe new life and performance in your GPU. Also, possibly look at repositioning fans in your case to get more direct airflow. We've seen recently with a lot of new cases nowadays, they have this like GPU scoop or like shroud that is now ducting air directly into graphics cards, which affects the cooling. You can effectively do this similar, or at least have an optimal setup for your specific PC case that will keep your graphics card temperatures as low as possible. So maybe you just need to reorient the fans in your PC case to get lower temperatures. And this can have an even just as big of a swing on impact of the performance of your GPU as tuning the fan curve itself on the GPU itself. So really, it's a win-win across all boards. Set custom fan curves. You're going to really appreciate the extra performance and longevity you get out of your graphics card. Now, like I said, tuning a fan curve is going to be 100% risk-free and 100% universal. Undervolting, however, pretty much next to zero risk, but a little bit of risk associated because you are putting the card and causing it to run out of spec. And it's not going to be universal because not all graphics cards are going to undervolt the exact same. A lot of modern day graphics cards are running on what we call a voltage frequency curve, and they actually have access to, they give access to the user to adjust the voltage frequency curve in a program like MSI Afterburner or another overclocking software to be able to fine tune the settings, boost clocks to get the maximum overclocking performance, or undervolting performance in our use case. Now, whenever a graphics card is demanded to be utilized by a program, it is going to draw a certain amount of power depending on the scene it's rendering, whatever it's doing, the task that has been put on it. And that power draw is going to be set at a set voltage, and that set voltage is going to call for a specific clock speed at that voltage. Manufacturers usually leave these tolerances on the worst case scenario, so they're overvolting in a lot of scenarios just to make sure that the worst quality graphics card that is qualified to work in their batch is still able to perform at the maximum level possible and avoid stability issues and avoid crashing. However, depending on the ASIC quality and depending on the lottery really of how good your GPU can undervolt, you might have a lot more headroom to run that same frequency, but at a lot lower of a voltage or lower power draw. What this is going to do is essentially, adjust that curve so at that same clock speed is going to be hit, however, at a lower utilization, a lower power draw, and thus a lower voltage. And we'll call for that clock speed increase, but still the same boost clock that the card is rated for, so that you can basically maximize the performance of your graphics card and make it more efficient, higher clock speed, lower power draw, lower temperatures across the board. Now, in undervolting, some people like to undervolt and overclock at the same time. That's not really something I recommend because that's usually when you're going to run into the most instability with your system. And if it's not in one game, it might be in another game, or when it's idling. Just a lot of weird things can happen. The best way to undervolt is to set the boost clock that you're trying to hit or the graphics card is advertised to run at, and try to get your advertised boost clock of that graphics card running at the lowest frequency or voltage possible. And that is going to be the best way to ensure that you have stability in the long run. Now, like I said, this is not going to be universal. Some graphics cards won't be able to support any undervolting. I have a 4080 in my workstation, and I tried undervolting it to like 1 volt, which you really should be going under 1 volt to effectively overclock to make a significant difference. Anything under 1 volt, the graphics card would just instantly crash whenever it was under load. So I have to just run at the standard clock speed. I just kind of left it alone or let it run stock and let GPU's boost to do its own thing and use the fan curve to kind of maximize the performance. Before I had the 4080, I had a 3090 in my workstation, and that graphics card actually undervolted quite well. And that was really the only reason that 3090 was even able to function in that chassis without overheating, is because I was able to undervolt it. So again, this can allow you to use certain graphics cards in certain situations and still get good performance, but not thermal throttle or run into different issues. But like I said, your mileage may vary. You can look up tutorials for your specific graphics card. A lot of information out there on the internet, on YouTube, to undervolt. But yeah, definitely look into it. Definitely incorporate it to optimize the performance of your system. Now, the fifth tip I have for you guys as far as making your GPU last forever is really just for used cards. Replace the thermal paste and thermal pads when necessary. My 3070 here, for example, I went ahead and one of the first things I did after testing that it worked, obviously, was replace thermal paste and thermal pads. I have a cryo sheet installed on here. I'll show a picture of exactly what I did. And I have some high performance thermal pads. What this is essentially going to do is just refresh the graphics card, give it some new thermal materials so it can cool at its optimum efficiency as if it was brand new. Also gives you the chance to clean on any dust or debris that's been collecting in the graphics card or on the PCB over time that could be impacting performance. And in some situations, you might even see a boost in performance over stock if you throw in high performance thermal pads or high performance thermal paste, or even add thermal pads where they weren't before. It might have been a cost savings measure on the manufacturer's side, but for you, you're looking for maximum longevity. This is definitely the highest risk thing that you can do. If you aren't careful, you aren't familiar with disassembling your graphics card, and you aren't sure, probably try to find someone that either offers a service to do it for you or just buy a brand new graphics card. Too often do you see graphics cards that have been damaged or have had PCB surface diodes or whatever might knocked off because someone lost control of a screwdriver when trying to reassemble a cooler, and the rest is history. Now, the cryo sheet I mentioned before, this is actually a thermal paste replacement. It is like a thermal pad, like a really thin layer of metal material. This graphics card is going to be able to maintain its cooling performance for the foreseeable future without me needing to touch anything. Downside with the cryo sheets is it is thermally conductive or electrically conductive, so you don't want it to short anything on the graphics card. I would recommend high quality phase change material or a thermal paste that has been reviewed and tested to have a low pump out effect, and high quality, high performance thermal pads that are definitely rated to last the test of time. That way, once you do this, you don't have to do it again. Just keep your graphics card clean in a clean environment, and you should be good to go. So there you have it. 5 tips you can implement whenever you're buying a graphics card, already have one, whatever you need to do to breathe more life into your system and make your GPUs last forever. Let me know in the comment section if I forgot anything or you have any more tips and tricks that you guys can employ to breathe more life into your GPU. But I want to throw this thing back at my gaming PC and keep testing out this dual GPU setup. I'll be showing it to you guys really soon. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Take care.